Hi warriors, it's Hannah here and welcome back to another video. Today I'll be talking all about body image and bad body image days post-recovery. As we all know, weight gain is tricky and trying to accept and love your new body, well, there's a lot of pressure on it, a lot of influencers shouting about it online, and it's something that I decided I needed to tackle today. Note that I am not a medical professional and this video exists solely for information and education purposes only. Note also that every eating disorder is different. Not all eating disorders are characterized by weight loss. Not all recoveries require weight restoration. Not all people struggle in the same way, and some people might have no issue whatsoever with their body image. This video is made specifically for those who are struggling with their body image after having recovered into their healthy bodies. I think during the whole recovery process, body image struggles and how to deal with them, well, it's completely different still. So if you are weight restored or nearing weight restoration and you're struggling with your body image and bad body image days, then this video is for you. Keep watching. You see, I dealt with an eating disorder for 6, maybe 7 years of my life. I was diagnosed with anorexia, traits of OCD, depression, probably resulting from that eating disorder, and these years were characterized by a lot of self-hatred, pouring lots of nutritional drinks down the drain, lying to all my dear family and friends, and just feeling generally incredibly miserable. However, even when medical tests were coming back with concerning results, I kept going at it. I didn't feel able to snap out. Until in about 2015, I finally decided to take the reign of my own life again and recover. Since then, there hasn't been a day that I've looked back at my eating disorder and wanted to go back to it. My eating disorder was hell, and there's no way I'm ever returning there. However, that doesn't mean that I don't still struggle with my emotions sometimes. That doesn't mean that my mental health is perfect nowadays. And it definitely does not mean that my body image is suddenly 100% healed. Hell to the no. I wasn't happy with my body back during the time of my eating disorder, but once I recovered, that didn't really change. Obviously, I was in a much healthier place. Mentally, I was doing a lot better. Physically, I was doing a lot better in a lot of ways. But I was dissatisfied with my body at my worst and still dissatisfied with my body at my healthiest weight. Initially, this did bring up some questions in my mind because why even bother with gaining weight if I'm still going to feel pretty shit? Why opt to feel shit at a higher weight as opposed to a lower weight? And yes, looking back, I see that that's very disordered thinking patterns, and my life improved in a lot of different ways. But still, the question remained. If I still felt bad about my body, and if this really, really affected my life, what was the point? How could I get over this? Would it ever really get better? Gaining weight didn't solve all of my problems. It wasn't the panacea, even though so many professionals claimed that once I gained the weight, everything would be fine again. Well, it wasn't. Of course, as I just mentioned, the eating disorder would sort of try to convince me back during the early stages of being more or less recovered that was a reason to go back to the eating disorder, to go back to restriction, to go back to that safety, that coping mechanism. But by this point, I'd gone too far the other way, and I knew that life on the other side was better, and I didn't want to go back to the eating disorder. Because obviously, the promise that weight gain will solve everything was bullshit, but the promise by the eating disorder that weight loss would do the same, that was worse still. I knew not to fall into that trap again. Neither weight loss or weight gain is the answer, and life is a lot more complex than that. Living with an eating disorder is damn hard. But living in your new recovered body, especially initially, that's tough too. You have to get used to new curves, in some cases an entirely new body that you're just not used to. For me, my eating disorder started before I truly went through puberty. And all of a sudden, I was expected to just accept this new woman's body that had never really been mine before. It felt crazy. At the same time as I was putting on weight and approaching my healthy weight, I could feel the support from professionals slowly dropping off. After all, with weight gain, my situation wasn't as critical anymore. Clearly, I was doing better. I've heard the same view from many other people that I know and many of my clients who have worked with professionals and found that the support simply fades away when they reach their target goals, or even when they merely approach a healthy BMI. And that is not okay. A lot of the time, this time period is what is going to make or break your recovery. You can either keep pushing through because you've not made it yet, or you can try to balance the state of quasi-recovery until inevitably you relapse and have to start again. I want you to keep going now and to make it towards full recovery now. Don't wait, don't relapse, don't waste your time. Life's a lot better on the other side, even though body image can still suck. Hang around because I will be sharing some concrete tips as well later on in this video. Things that have helped me. And even though my body image still isn't perfect, it's a whole lot better than it used to be. During my eating disorder, during my recovery, and even in the few years after my recovery. One of my coaching clients actually put the whole conundrum into words perfectly. I am really proud of my body, but I felt obliged to reach out for your coaching help. Why? Because whilst I know my body does a lot for me and is surviving through everything I put it through, I'm still disgusted by it. I can be proud of it, but still think that it's ugly. Those words were really powerful for me, and I think it resonates with a lot of people. It definitely resonates with what my situation used to be like. The same coaching client then went on to say how her eating disorder always felt like an achievement to her, and how eating more and seeing that reflected in her weight felt like failure. Every single day when she then looked into the mirror, she was reminded of this sense of failure. She felt horrible, and in order to feel slightly better, she therefore still relied on just a few eating disorder mechanisms, just a few ways that she used to restrict in the past, or over-exercise in the past, to feel better, to feel slightly less like a failure. Cue problems, because obviously that's not the way to fully let go of the eating disorder. The worst case scenario plays out. You're no longer thin and miserable. You're now normal weight or approaching normal weight and miserable still. Cue going back to more and more and more of the eating disorder behaviors. And cue feeling worse about yourself still, because the eating disorder is clearly not the solution. I've got to give all of the professionals this. Yes, weight restoration should probably be the first step. It's really important because it does get rid of some of that mind fog, it helps you think more clearly, and it just nourishes your undernourished body, which is crucial in recovery. It's an important first step, but it's not the panacea. Whilst it will help you think more clearly, it's not automatically going to drive out all of the disordered thoughts either. For that, you need to actually challenge those thoughts. Cognitive restructuring is my favorite method in my coaching, but there's definitely other methods that do also have some evidence base behind them too. However, whilst rewiring the brain is possible, it does take time, and especially with psychological symptoms like body image, it can take months, sometimes even years, for these new thought patterns to fully become ingrained, to fully become automatic. And in that time, Well, for me at least, the struggle was real, but you have to keep going. As with any of the other uncomfortable changes in recovery, the only way forward is to keep up these new behaviors, to keep going until one day you find that it's no longer as difficult. It comes quite naturally to you. It's your new routine, your new habit. It's really not that sexy. Recovery doesn't happen in a day, but it requires consistent, boring, behavioral and thought changes. Not exactly the title you'd see on a book. Body image is often one of the last symptoms to fade, unfortunately. On bad days, for whatever reason, body image concerns do still come up a lot of the time. And to be honest, it happens in the general population as well. However, if you feel perfectly fine about your body one moment and you feel fat, or you feel ugly, or you feel uncomfortable the next, chances are it's not really about your body, but it's all in your mind. As such, I propose the ABC model. It's not actually a model that's in existence, it's something that I'm coming up with on the spot right now, but I think it illustrates the point perfectly. A. Anorexia recovery. B. Behavior and beliefs. C. Challenges. Doing C before B or A before C, it doesn't really work. Take a stepwise approach and overcome your eating disorder that way. So obviously the first step, anorexia recovery, refers to putting on some weight. It's important physically and mentally, and I don't think there's any way to do recovery from a restrictive eating disorder any other way. If you're coming from binge eating or any other eating disorder, it's still important to fall into a new healthy routine with your eating patterns. So that is step number 1. Step number 2 relates to the beliefs and the behaviors. Whatever eating disorder you're coming from, it's important to tackle those. Consider the thoughts you have about yourself, about food, about your body, about exercise, about anything, and challenge them. Become aware of your automatic thoughts, note them down, write down how they make you feel, how they influence your behavior, and then whether or not they're actually valid. What is the evidence? What is the counter evidence? And what would be an alternative belief that is, well, just a whole lot better than the initial thought that just popped up into your head unquestioned. In terms of behaviors, these two need to be addressed. The eating disorder ones, bingo. Last, challenges. So of course, keep on challenging the thoughts, keep on challenging the behaviors. The fear foods, do exactly what makes you feel uncomfortable, because that's where you're going to find change. In my recovery, for example, I initially really struggled with walking into a room and not necessarily being the skinniest one there. I struggled to let go of that sense of identity. I needed to become more aware of my thoughts. For example, eating less shows self-control, or being thinner equates success. And I needed to challenge those thoughts. I needed to consider the evidence for them. There wasn't all that much. And the counter evidence. I needed to talk to myself more kindly. I mean, realistically, I did know that what you look like doesn't really have anything to do with success. I know that I wouldn't judge a friend on how big or small their body is. And if anyone were to comment on my body changes or my appearance, well, I know that that's the kind of people I wouldn't really want to hang out with anyway. But it's only by doing these thought experiments that those realizations actually hit home. Beforehand, the automatic thoughts were just there, perpetually unquestioned. They had become very ingrained, and it's only by really looking into them that I noticed them, that I challenged them, that I replaced them. It's only by acknowledging that this body is my body. It's non-negotiable. I am not ever gonna pursue weight loss ever again. That I started focusing on the things that are actually negotiable, that are malleable, like my thoughts and my behavior, and how much I choose to identify with my appearance over and above anything else. And I decided that there's a whole lot of things in my life that I find a whole lot more important than what I look like. For example, my coaching business. For example, my hobbies, spending time with friends, with family. These things hold a lot more value for me now. And as these gain in value, my focus on appearance, on the eating disorder, and all of that jazz slowly reduced. Quick note here. When you feel fat, what are you actually feeling? Because fat is a descriptor. It's not a feeling. In society, unfortunately, fat is often associated with, well, everything that's negative. So sadness, anger, frustration, anxiety. Unrightfully so, yes, but which of these emotions are you actually experiencing? What triggered this feeling of fat? How could you actually label this feeling, and how could you deal with it without reverting back to maladaptive behaviors or old coping mechanisms? Just something to think about. Of course, it wasn't all just about the thoughts. I also had to change some behaviors, like actually putting my priorities first and stopping with the body checking and the weighing. But I do think the mind is a very powerful tool and should not be ignored. So, in other words, the eating disorder made me miserable and super hyper-focused on food and my body. Recovery didn't magically make me unicorns and rainbows, happy about myself, but gave me the mind space to focus on other things that do make me happy. And over time, that has simply taken the focus off of my body, which to me was key. Whenever I feel bad, or if I have a poor body image, I do find that those things influence each other. And I'm not always 100% positive about my achievements, about my body, about different aspects of my life. But that's quite normal. It happens. And nowadays, I know that it's not a perpetual state of misery, but it might be a couple of hours or a day of feeling a bit rough, and then moving on to more important things. I don't need to act on all of my thoughts. I don't need to and shouldn't self-destruct. I'm allowed to acknowledge thoughts as they come and just let them pass me by. They're not all worth my time. I choose to value the positive ones. I choose to journal about what I'm grateful for. And as to the negative ones, a lot of the time I just let them pass me by. If they're recurring ones, then obviously I probably just do the same exercise of challenging them. And then I move on. It's as hard and as easy as that. I move on. To let go of the eating disorder, I had to let go of control. I had to let go of the thoughts. I had to let go of the sense that my weight needed to settle at this one magical weight. I had to allow my body to take me where it wanted to go. My hunger cues to take me where they wanted to go. I had to give in. My body is clever, it knows what it's doing, and I've learned that now. But it took time, and if it's taken time for you, don't get impatient, but just keep going because it does get better. Just a few last tips I want to leave you with that did also really help me in my recovery include, as I mentioned, my gratitude journaling. focusing on what my body does rather than always just focusing on how it looks. Dropping the body checking, the scales, spending time with friends and people who don't constantly talk about diet and appearance, but who live life, who model a healthy relationship with their bodies and food, and who value me for my personality and not what I look like. Deleting any apps, you know which ones. Unfollowing any social media accounts, you probably also know which ones. Buying clothes that fit your body now, not a body that you maybe attain to have, but your body, your perfect body now. And having faith in the process. I'll include a few more tips in the associated blog post, so definitely check that out, as well as in the book I'm currently writing. I will soon have my 4-week recovery program out and ready for purchase, so keep an eye out for that. I'm super excited, and so far the response to it has been super positive, so yeah, that's all I wanted to share today. If you're having a bad day today, keep going. There'll be better days, and I will see you all next week for another video.